Yeah, my journey with presence started about 12 years ago when I was an executive coach with people, and a lot of people ask me, hey, Andre, how do I inspire my team? How do I deal with my boss? How do I, do an amazing presentation?
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining in on tonight's PDF webinar, Executive Presence for Young Professionals. I'm Annie and I'll be the moderator for tonight's session. Before we start, just a quick introduction to the Professional Development Forum PDF. PDF was established to help diverse young professionals reach their full potential in the modern workplace. We believe that everyone, not just the elite few, should have access to the knowledge, mindset, and networks to develop themselves. We believe that by becoming the best versions of ourselves, we lead a happier, more fulfilling life and inspire those around us to do the same. We do this by running events that aim to inform, connect, and inspire and share what we learned with our community. Now, just a few housekeeping rules. We encourage everyone to please turn on your webcams so we can better connect with each other. If you have any questions at any time throughout the session or would like to comment on anything that was said, then please feel free to type them into the chat box. You will be invited to ask your questions in the Q&A session. Please also note that this session is being recorded, so it may be shared on social media. Tonight, we are very honored to have André Alphonso as our guest speaker. André is an entrepreneur, business owner, leader of multiple businesses, published author, executive coach, facilitator, and keynote speaker who has over 30 years of business and consulting experience. He is the director of the Ariel Group in Australia, an organization that combines best practice from actor training and adult learning to train clients on how to lead, influence, and inspire others using presence. He is also founder and chairman of the Forum Corporation in India. André has worked in and consulted to over 100 organizations in over 20 different industries across 14 countries. He has trained over 30,000 people in leadership skills, personal and professional development areas. Having executive presence, the ability to connect authentically with others, to inspire and influence them to act could help you advance in your career, business, and life. And tonight, André will be sharing with us his personal stories and strategies you can apply to project confidence, effectively communicate your value, and honing your presence. Thank you, André, for being here with us tonight. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you very much for that. I always love those introductions because it makes me feel really old. And here I am in front of a group of diverse young professionals. So looking forward to the session. And my purpose today is to just make sure that each one of you leave with something really practical that you can use 55 minutes from now. Okay, so I want to make sure you have real tangible takeaways to elevate your executive presence. So let me just get into my slides. So first of all, André Alphonso, and some of you looking at me now on the camera are saying, well, that's a strange name, André Alphonso. So let me just quickly tell you, I was born in India and my parents immigrated to Australia when I was 12 years old. And so I, like many of you on this call today, had to forge my way as an immigrant in this amazing country that we've chosen to call home. And it has challenges, right, in terms of your presence and how you show up. So I'll share some of that with you. Just something, and Annie mentioned it just really quickly, something about Ariel Group, because that will give you a real context in terms of this session today. So Ariel Group was formed 30 years ago in Boston in the US by two actors, and they decided that they were going to take all of the skills they learned in acting school and bring it to business. Because they figured that the best communicators in the world arguably are actors. They can make you laugh, they can make you cry, they can make you sad, they can make you happy. How can we do that by bringing those skills into the business world? And that's what they did 30 years ago. And along the way, not long after they started, probably about 2 or 3 years in, they actually found out that it's more than just communication skills. There's this thing called presence, executive presence, leadership presence, sales presence, personal presence, virtual presence, all sorts of presence. And they actually wrote a book, which is called Leadership Presence. These are the founders of our company. And if you're thinking about how I fit in here, my journey with presence started about 12 years ago when I was an executive coach with people. And a lot of people ask me, hey, Andre, how do I inspire my team? How do I deal with my boss? How do I, do an amazing presentation? So that was it. So my purpose today is this. This is what we're going to cover. 3 topics. What do we mean by executive presence? Why is it important? And how do I amplify my presence? We're going to spend the bulk of this session in the last one. So this is practical. It's not about theory. It's not about models. It's not about research and all those sorts of things. It's trying to make it as practical as I can for you so that you can take some tangible things away with you. Okay, so the first question, what is executive presence? So this is what our definition is. And you can see there's certain things that are underlined and highlighted. And I just want to just quickly talk about each one. The first one is that it is an ability. And that means you can learn it. You know, sometimes people say you're either born with it or you're born without it. Well, 30 years of experience in working with presence, we know it's something each one of us on this call can learn. So it's an ability to connect authentically, and I'm going to come back to authentic right through this whole presentation because that's central to what we do over here. To connect authentically with the hearts and minds of others. So not just the head, but also the heart, the emotions center, to motivate and inspire them towards a desired outcome. So that's our definition. I hope you're all cool with that. Yeah, show me thumbs if you are. Yay, I can get some thumbs. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Kim. All the people. Woohoo! Fantastic. Okay. So let me deconstruct executive presence for you. And this is also going to be kind of our agenda for today. There are 4 components. So in all of the work we've done and to this day that we do, there are 4 components to executive presence that each one of us could look at to enhance. The first one is being present in the moment, here and now. Okay, we'll talk about that. The second thing is reaching out. How do you reach out to other people and connect with them and build amazing relationships? Expressiveness. How do you express yourself at 240 volts? If you're in Australia, if you're another part of the world, whatever your voltage system is. And the last and most important part is self-knowing. It is about your authenticity. And we're going to spend some time on each one of those 4 as we go through the session. Okay, let's look at why it might be important to you. So here are some examples of high stakes situations where your presence comes to the fore. If you have high executive presence when you're trying to impress a senior leader, a CEO in your organization, or making a big presentation, or winning that deal, or getting your idea listened to, or standing up for that promotion, those are the things when executive presence comes really important to you. So here's what I want you to do. In your chat box, I want you to write down what might be some other high stakes situations you think you would need. Other situations where you think you could have executive presence. Let me rephrase that. If you can, in your chat box, write down any situations you think where you need presence. Okay. Being interviewed on TV. Contract negotiations, says Lawrence. Awesome. Let's see what else we got. Okay, people, I'm waiting for the chat. Dating, ha ha, Damien, awesome. Negotiating a raise, successful in meaningful trainings to new and oldies, leading a team, beautiful. In the Cold War with your spouse, Kim Woo, goodness me. Man, oh man, you sound like a character, Kim Woo. In the Cold War with your spouse. That's hilarious. Thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. So there's many situations, and this is not a complete list. There's many situations where you need presence. Okay, so let's go to the, let me just come back here, to the first element of presence, and that is being present in the moment. Here's the definition, and I'll read it out. The ability to be completely in the moment, undistracted by anything past or future, sharp as a razor and flexible enough to handle the unexpected. Now, we live in a world of distractions, everyone. Yeah, there's so many things going off that trying to get your attention, that to be 100% present is sometimes a real challenge. But there's some beliefs that I want to share with you, because this only becomes true for you if you believe that you are at your very best when you are 100% present. Okay, and we're going to show you how to make yourself 100% present in about 4 or 5 minutes. So that's where we're going with this. So first of all, one of the things that we're fighting with consistently is our internal distractions. As I'm talking to you right now, there are thoughts going through your head. What's for dinner? What's on TV? What show will I watch on Netflix tonight? What's he going to talk about? Look at the color of his shirt. Oh, it's good to see Annie on the call. I mean, those are all things going through your mind while I am talking to you. In fact, someone in Canada, Queen's University, actually tracked by putting people in a functional brain scanning machine, functional MRI, that we have somewhere around 6,200 thought worms a day. We have more than 2,000 daydreams a day. You know, we go to a happy place, wherever that is. And the interesting thing is that we just give just 1/3 of our attention to others when they're speaking. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, on average, I'm only getting 1/3 of your attention, right? So we're fighting this internal battle constantly. And there's more. There is an external distraction as well. Yeah. So arguably the greatest invention of our lifetime is our smartphone. Our smartphone gives us access to just about all of the knowledge in this world, or certainly a huge amount. Our smartphone gives us access to all of the entertainment, whether it's movies or music. It gives us connection to just about anyone in the world. It is an amazing device. But as you and me know, a smartphone also takes away your attention. And as I'm talking to you right now, I will guarantee of the 24 participants on this call, at least 50% of you have already got notifications by now, right? There's something that's pinging that is taking your attention. And what happens when it comes to presence is that we get distracted and it takes us away from being at our very best. So a distraction takes us away from being at our very best. Okay. We're going to do a quick exercise. Everyone's going to do this. I'm going to, and it's going to take us not very quick. So everybody ready? Okay, here's what I want you to do. It's very simple. When I say go, in your head, recite the alphabet from A to Z as fast as you can. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, you should be done by now. Yeah, anyone not done? Everyone done? Show me your hands if you're done. Yay, of course you are. That takes on average about 6, 7 seconds. Okay, so let's try this. Next, in your head, count from 1 to 16 as fast, or 1 to 26, I should say, 1 to 26 as fast as you can. 1 to 26 as fast as you can. Go. Okay, again, less than 10 seconds. Now we're going to try your performance. So if you add the time it took you to go A to Z or 1 to 26, it's probably 8 seconds and 8 seconds, about 16 seconds. Now we're going to show you what it's like to multitask. Okay, so this is what I want you to do next. I want you to combine these two tasks and say A1, B2, C3, and so on until you get to M13 when I say go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, those of you who've given up, just show me your thumbs. Yes, okay. Okay. Some of you are giving up and saying, nah, it's too hard, I won't do it. So here's the point. What we did is just show you a very good example of multitasking, because people say, I can multitask. In fact, we have through neuroscience, we know that multitasking is a myth. What we actually do is task switching. We go from one to another, particularly when it's using the same cognitive elements of your brain. So if you are on the phone and you're trying to pay attention and there's a ping in a high stakes situation, you are not at your best, right? We need you to be 100% present, because when you pay attention to someone, and I remember when I was at school, and I'm sure you would remember too when you were at school, teachers would always say, Andre, pay attention, or Kim, pay attention, or Jeff, pay attention, or Frankie, pay attention, or Ali, or Annie. And somehow that word pay attention has kind of diluted. But if you think of that word, pay attention. Pay means giving something to somebody else. You're paying something. And what we're doing when we're paying attention is giving someone the most important resource that we have right now, our time and your attention, right? So I say what it is being present is a differentiator. It is your superpower. And when I am sitting in a meeting with talking to someone, as I was earlier today, I make sure that I'm 100% present. My phone's off. I am there in those high stakes situations, because you cannot multitask as we go forward. Okay, so this is your superpower. If you could be 100% present in your conversations with somebody else, it will give you unfair advantage. Believe me. Okay, so this is a quote from one of my favorite quotes of all time by a woman called Maya Angelou. She was an American poet, writer, civil activist, has been nominated for a gazillion things, got the Medal of Honor from Barack Obama. And this is what she said: I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. People will never forget how you made them feel. And if you give people 100% attention, that is going to make a huge difference in terms of what they walk away with at the end of the conversation. Okay, so that's 100% present. How do I make myself present? Okay, so this is a practical exercise. I'm going to show you how to do this. And I want everybody to either stand up or sit down. Just make sure you're comfortable. But what I want you to do is to put your hands, as you can see with me, on the side just under your ribs. Okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to show you a very quick technique on how to make yourself 100% present. Okay, it's a breathing exercise. We're going to first of all breathe deeply through your nose, and we're going to breathe in to a count of 4 right into your lungs and into your diaphragm, and you can feel your ribs and your belly expand. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to exhale to a count of 8, and you feel your belly contract. And we're going to do this together. We're going to do 3 rounds. So in through your nose, hands on the side, I'll count to 4, and then we breathe out slower than what we breathed in. Okay, are we ready? Okay. Okay, breathe in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, you can breathe normally now. So what we've just done is try to make you 100% present. And now some of you may be saying, well, I don't feel 100% present right now. Well, it comes with practice. But those of us in the room over here who do mindfulness training and have done mindfulness training, you'll probably understand how fast it is to get into that moment. From a neuroscience point of view, what we've done is we've actually put to sleep the sympathetic nervous system and activated the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that is the flight and fight response, right? It's the accelerator. The parasympathetic nervous system is the brake. And what we've done over here by just breathing, we have brought you back into the moment. Now, a couple of things. Where did we learn this? From actor school, right? So actors learn to do this before they go on stage. Before they go on stage, they do breathing. Before you do your next presentation, I encourage you to do your breathing. Before I started this presentation, I did exactly that to make me 100% present for you guys. It is a differentiator, guys. Go for it. So that's our first thing that we're going to be looking at. Okay, let's keep going because we've got 3 more to go. The next one is called reaching out, which is the ability to build relationships with others through empathy, listening, and authentic connection. And this is a really interesting one, you know, because sometimes people think presence is all about the spotlight being on you. But in this instance, about reaching out, the best leaders put the spotlight on other people, right? I've seen amazing leaders do that. In fact, I've seen Jeff from PDF do that on a number of occasions, Jeff. So well done, mate. So this is about reaching out to other people. You know, we want our leaders to see us, hear us, know us, value us. And that can only come when we reach out. And I often hear people say, oh, I've got an open door policy. Come in and see me whenever you need to. That is not what this is. This is you going to see them. This is about you putting the spotlight on them, not just having an open door policy. That doesn't go far enough when it comes to presence. Leaders who have presence reach out. I want to tell you a quick story. Okay, sorry, before I get to the story. First of all, it's a belief. It's not about me, but it's about being curious about the other person. Right? And the tactic I want to share with you is a really lovely metaphor for empathy. So here's the story. That is my daughter, Molly. She is now 23 years old. And about it happened 6 months ago. I'm sitting at home and she comes back from work. She's a manager in an organization. And she walks in and she starts telling me of the challenges she's had at work today. And you can see she's quite emotional. She has tears in her eyes. And as she's talking to me, I kind of, as the dad, as the executive coach, as the business leader, as the entrepreneur, all those fantastic words Annie said right at the start, I immediately know what she has to do to fix the problem. Right? I'm already there. So before she's even finished, I've already got the 2 or 3 things she has to do to solve the problem. And just before she even finishes, I say, Molly, this is what you need to do. And I go through and she looks at me and she says, Dad, I just don't like talking to you anymore. What? I just don't think you understand. I just don't think you really understand. And she walked out with tears in her eyes. I was devastated. Here I am, a communicator that teaches communication skills, and my own daughter says to me, you don't understand. I don't like talking to you. Wow. It taught me a lesson that day. I'm going to share that with you. This is a guy called Jiddu Krishnamurti. You might have heard of him. He's a philosopher, again, one of the thought leaders of our time, although he died a few years ago, but certainly a thought leader. And this is his quote. And this is the quote that actually gets me, because this is exactly what happened between Molly and myself. And it's all about reaching out. I'll read it out to you. If we try to listen, we find it extraordinarily difficult, because we are always projecting our opinions and ideas, our prejudices, our background, our inclinations, our impulses. When they dominate, we hardly listen at all to what is being said. In that state, there is no value at all. One listens and therefore learns only in a state of attention, a state of silence, in which this whole background is in abeyance. It's quiet, and then it seems to me it is possible to communicate. And how often does that happen to us when we are trying to reach out to other people who are talking about something really, really important to them? We've already made up our minds what the issue is, and we've moved on. So here's the tip. Curiosity and judgment can't exist in the same space. You're either curious or you're judging someone, right? And where is the light switch? Is it on curiosity or is it on judgment? Now, here's the thing. We will always get to judgment. We will always get to judgment. But what we want to do is to stay curious for just a little bit longer. Remain curious for just a little bit longer, which is what I should have done with Molly. And you know what? I've learned my lesson, and I tell that story of Molly so often these days to other people, because I've learned that by actually being curious, I am reaching out in a very profound way than actually giving advice. Here's the thing, though, for us. What are the challenges? And I'm sure you feel it. People we like, it's much easier to be curious with. People we dislike, we move to judgment, right? The light switch is on judgment. We don't want to listen to them. We don't like them. We don't want to talk to them. But what we're asking you to do is to try and be curious just a little bit longer. So here's the metaphor that I want to share with you, because I love this metaphor, and it's from classical Chinese. And can anyone in the chat box tell me what that word is or that symbol is in the chat box. Okay, Jeffrey Wayne, listen, look at you go. And how do you say it, Jeff? Come on.
Ting.
Ting, absolutely. Ting, ting it is. And ting is basically made up of 5 elements to listen. The first one is to pay undivided attention. The second one is to treat the person who's speaking like royalty. The same thing we talked about, being present, the first tactic. The next thing is that we listen with our ears. We listen with our heart to what the feelings and emotions might be. And we listen with our eyes to see what it is we're taking in. I love the symbol, ting, this metaphor, because it encapsulates the things we have to do to be like Jiddu Krishnamurti actually said, to be 100% and to really listen where we can actually be valuable to the other person. So that's the first part of reaching out, right? The second part is you've got to show them that you're feeling what they're feeling. Right? Empathy is about letting them know you feel what they feel, because only then can you really look at building meaningful relationships. Okay, so that's the first 2 of our model. So here's what I'm going to get you to do. Right? This is a halftime check-in because we're halfway through, 7:30, perfect. So I'm going to ask you to share 1 or 2 takeaways from either being present in the moment, which we talked about being 100% present, or reaching out. Just in the chat box, if you can. I'd love you to just get some sense and some feedback from you. What are some takeaways from you from the first 2 elements? In the chat box, 1 or 2 takeaways. Okay, Belinda Liu, great question. What is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Okay, don't be distracted by the others. Put myself and me as second, great. Being present is hard to do nowadays with all the distractions, absolutely. I'll come back to the question of sympathy and empathy in a moment. What else have we got? Got anything else? I really like the curiosity versus judgment comment. Makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you. Curiosity, injection of some fun element. Listen and don't just give your opinion. Thank you, Kevin. Avi, developing self-awareness when listening attentively, being genuinely curious. So Kim, in your battle of the Cold War with your spouse, right? How can you use this? Rhetorical question. Okay, so coming back to the question that was raised, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? Does anybody want to come off mute and try and explain that to who was it? To Belinda. Okay. No takers. Nobody wants to come off mute and explain the difference between sympathy and empathy.
I'll give it a shot. I think.
Okay.
I think from my point of view, empathy is when you're actually feeling what the other person is saying or what you think they're feeling at the time. But sympathy means that you can understand what they're saying, but you don't need to feel the same way they do. That's a general understanding of what I'm
Andrew, you've graduated, mate. You're done. That is perfect. That is so true, Linda. So exactly what it is. So sympathy is you might be feeling sympathy for the other person. So it's something for them. Empathy, you feel empathy with the other person. It's feeling the same emotion that they are. So it's the emotion that you feel. So if they're feeling sad, you channel a time when you felt sad and you can access sadness. Or if you're feeling joy, you access joy so that you can feel a similar emotion to what they're feeling. So that's the difference. Okay, fantastic. Well, lots of takeaways. And I love the fact that curiosity remaining curious a little bit longer, or leading with curiosity is a takeaway, because I got to tell you, that's something that I just, that's very important to me. Okay, so let's keep going with our presentation for the second half. Okay, developing self. Okay, Ali said, reminder to reach out to others and not wait for others to come to us. Beautiful. If you can take that away, Ali, you're going to make a huge difference in this world. Okay. Let's come back here. So we're coming to the third element, which we call expressiveness. How do you express yourself at 240 volts, full charge, right? How do you express yourself at 240 volts? More importantly, when you speak, how do you get your voice heard? How do you get people to listen to you? And the other thing about expressiveness, because it's the definition is the ability to express feelings and emotions appropriately by using all of the channels we have, words, voice, face, body, to deliver one congruent message. Okay, one congruent message. Yeah, so here's the belief. If knowledge sharing is critical to your job, then so is expressing yourself in a way which makes you get heard. So if you're in a job where you've got to share knowledge, this is a critical skill that you've got to take away. And I'm going to share tactics of high presence, low presence elements of voice, face, and body. In fact, we have a handout which Annie will send to you after the session, basically focused exactly on that. Okay. So the first thing is about, I want to just say something about credibility, because, you know, often you get people show up and say, hey, I'm real, you know, no, they don't say that. They say, they get up in front of a meeting of company, in your company, and say, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. And they're reading from their notes. And you go, really? You don't seem really excited to be here today. They're speaking in monotone. There is no energy. They're not even making eye contact with you. And you go, I don't believe you. Your credibility drops instantly. So what we're saying here is to make it congruent across all of those things. So I want to share a quick story with you. Probably way before any of you were born, it was the first televised television debate in the US in 1962. It was between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Now, up until that time, most of the debates were listened to on radio, because that was an available medium at the time. This is the first time it was televised. A month before the debate, Nixon had injured his knee and had surgery, and going to the television studio, getting out of the car, he knocked his knee and it had become infected, and he was in absolute agony. He went into the dressing room and they were putting makeup on them, and they asked if he wanted makeup, and he said, no, I don't want makeup. And they went through and did the debate. After the debate finished, you know, we had John F. Kennedy, the young guy from Massachusetts, standing over there, and you had Richard Nixon in pain, you know, taking his hanky out to kind of wipe his brow, leaning over the lectern to support his knee. Nobody knew what had happened to him. They did a poll at the end of the debate. People who saw it on TV said Kennedy won in a landslide. People who heard it on the radio said Nixon won it on a landslide. How could that be? Right? Same words, same speakers. The only difference is one group saw and the other group heard. So it became a bit of a passion for a guy called Albert Mehrabian, and he came up with this thing called the Mehrabian rule, which I think is pretty amazing. I'm going to share it with you. Is that when we communicate with somebody, right, when we express ourselves, we use words. the tone of our voice, and non-verbals, our smile, our energy, our gestures, our body posture, all those sorts of things. Here's the interesting thing that Morabian found is that when we are communicating emotions, right, which is the hard stuff, only 7% of what the person listens to or gets is the words, 38% is on the voice, and 55% is on the verbals. So basically 93% of the message coming across to your audience is nothing to do with the words. Yet, when I work with companies, and I'm sure you do too, we agonize over the deck. You know, let's get the deck right. Just change this word. And when you're putting a presentation together, we agonize over the 7%. And we don't do enough with the 93%. Okay, so I'm going to try a quick exercise with you guys, if you're willing. So if you can see me, what I want you to do is I want you to look and listen to me. I want you to put your hand out, make a perfect circle with your thumb and forefinger. Okay, let's do it, everyone. Put it, now extend it as far as you can from your body. Now, what I want you to do is bring it in and touch your cheek. Okay, I messed it up. What I meant to say is, okay, bring it in and touch your cheek with me touching my chin. There you go. Andre, you need to practice a bit more with that one, because most people watch me and not actually listen to me. Thanks, Jeff. You see the humor in it. Okay. So that's the Moravian rule. It's really powerful, right? Try it out when you finish this call. Go to someone, go to your kids and say, do this and see what happens. Okay, so what is it? What are these signals of executive presence that you can use? And Annie is going to send you a handout which has all of these on it, so you don't have to worry about taking too many notes. But here are the elements. First of all is eye contact. So what we're talking about is steady. Eye contact is high presence, unsteady, low presence. If you're flicking your eyes all over the place. And when we are in a crowd of people, we're getting distracted all over the place. Are you steady or are you unsteady? Breathing. Out of breath is low presence. Full, deep breaths with your voice, high presence. Touching your face is actually a sign of you feeling scared and vulnerable. Okay, so no face touching. Your body, are you moving or are you a robot? Do you own the space? Are you using gestures appropriately to get your message across? Because don't forget, your body language and gestures is a huge percent of the communication that's happening over here. Your voice. Some of the times, a lot of us fall into monotone. We're talking at the same pace all the time, just like this as I'm doing it with you right now, and there's no variation. And after about 10 seconds, everybody's going to sleep. Yeah? Or are you using vocal variation? You speed it up, you slow it down. Right? And the other thing we do in Australia, particularly with our accent, is we go up at the end of sentences. It's good to see you all here today. How are you all doing? Let me tell you something interesting that I saw this afternoon. And going up at the end actually is low presence. What we need to do is go down at the end. And that's something you can monitor yourself. I saw something really interesting this afternoon. It's gravity, right? And the last one is silence. People who avoid silence and people who use silence and pauses. And some of you might be thinking, okay, so in the chat box, what I want you to do is, what signal do you think you need to focus on? So let's be a little bit open. Let's not be shy. If you had to just work on one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 signals, which one would you work on? On your chat box, guys, take a second to just write one in. Okay, so there's some good questions over here. Gestures, silence, voices. Okay, fantastic. And there's some good questions as well. I just looked at that. So, okay. So where do you look at if you're presenting, having a meeting online? How about touching your body? Touching fingers around neck, holding hands in front. Okay, that's right. So what we say is, if you want to touch, it's your face and neck, which is basically the thing of low presence. It doesn't matter if you're using your gestures to talk about your hands and stuff, that's fine, as long as you're making a point. You can touch your neck or your face if you want to make a point and it's congruent with your message, okay? The other thing is, how do you do it when you are online, which is fantastic, okay? It's a great question. Let me try and deal with that, okay? So virtual presence, because I knew everybody's going to ask me about virtual presence. Guess what? It's the same things. It's exactly the same thing. So we do a lot of work on teaching people virtual presence at Ariel. And the great question about eye contact is, how do I make eye contact on a screen when there's all these people over here? Here is our rule at Ariel. Just as I am doing right now, if you can see me, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking straight down the camera. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking straight into the camera because I know this is me looking at the screen, right? Looking at the camera, looking at the screen. So if I'm talking to you down here or talking to you up here, it makes a difference. Have you noticed it? Can you pick it? Show me a thumbs up if you can pick the difference. Okay, there you can. So it takes a bit of practice to talk straight down, look straight down the camera. Really encourage you to do that. When you finish talking, absolutely look around the screen, right? But when you're talking, straight into there. Okay. Right. Self-knowing. This is the most important one, and this is kind of where I want to spend a bit of time. This is the ability to accept yourself, to be authentic, and to reflect your values in your decisions and actions. Okay. Now, the belief is to show up as really authentic means choosing to remove the mask I hide behind. And the skilled tactics, the 3 rules of authenticity that I am going to share with you. Now, I want to tell you a story, and this is my story, and it's about my journey in Australia as an immigrant coming in, and how I have kind of been through it, and I'm sure some of you may be feeling the same way. You see, when I landed in Australia at the age of 12, my parents put me into a really good school on the North Shore of Sydney. I was the only brown kid in the entire school. At 12 years old, boys only school, you can imagine how much fun that was for me, right? I'm sure some of you may have been there. It was tough because, you know, it wasn't everyone, but there was a few people, a group of guys that decided that their masculinity was kind of defined by pushing me around and bullying me. And the result of that was I carried a lot of shame. I never told my parents. I hid it, and I was shameful of it. And the first mask that I put on was to lose my Indianness. So I lost my accent. I lost my head bobble, which I had. I couldn't lose the color of my skin because that's what it was. But I had, and to this day, and everyone thinks it's quite funny, I cannot do an Indian accent. Right? So everyone says, come on, Andre, do an Indian accent at parties. And I do it, and they go, that's rubbish. That's not an Indian accent at all. You sound just like an Aussie. I can do a better Irish accent than I can an Indian accent. So there's something programmed into my head because that's how impactful it was on me. So the first mask I put on was to hide my Indianness, right? Then, as I moved out of school, I got into the corporate world. I started to get successful and I started to move up organizations. and I became HR director for an IT company. And I fell in love with my career because my career gave me all of the self-belief that I didn't have. And I put on a career mask. So I have an Aussie mask, I put on a career mask. And I fell in love with my career. And my marriage at that stage became an inconvenient truth. I spent so much time in my career that my marriage failed. Ultimately, we separated, and my 3 kids went with their mum. And it was one of the hardest times for me. In fact, it was so hard, it kind of broke my heart. And that mask that I put on stayed with me for a long time because it covered up all of my insecurities as a human being. And as I went through life, these masks kept putting on. About 5 years ago, I didn't even think much about it. I didn't think much about it because I felt I needed to do that to get on in this world. And I just didn't feel good about me. I didn't feel good about me because it wasn't me. 5 years ago, I had a mess. I almost died. I was going through a procedure, and in the operating room, I went into critical condition. I was conscious. I was tilted upside down in the bed while they were trying to get the defibrillators out to try and hit my heart in case my heart stopped. And the nurse said to me, "Andre, we're trying to save your life. You've dropped into critical." In that moment, I thought, am I going to die? I'm not ready for death. And in that moment, I realized that I was going to take off all of those masks that I had put on if I survived and become the person who I wanted to become, me. Now, it took me almost dying to come to that realization. I share that with you right now because for some of you, you may be putting on masks. And I found when I took the mask off, I felt a sense of liberation and freedom I'd never felt until before I was at school as a child. Right? And screw those people who judge me for whatever reason it is. It's about me. I don't care about how other people judge me. It's how I judge myself. So I want to just share a couple of quotes with you. This is from Friedrich Nietzsche. He says the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Yeah, it is tough. Coming out the other end though, right? This is a quote from Brené Brown. What's the greater risk? Letting go of what people think or letting go of how I feel, what I believe, and who I am? So ask yourself the question, who am I trying to please? And the second question, are they worthy? Yeah. Because really what we're talking about is you as young professionals being yourselves. Now, when it comes to presence, your presence, if you're dipping into the well, that is you. That's where your presence lies. So there's a butterfly over here, and I use the metaphor of a butterfly. You see, a butterfly cannot see its own wings. It has no idea how beautiful it is. And in my experience of working with professionals like you, diverse young professionals, most of us don't believe how amazing we are as individuals. We double guess ourselves and we hide behind masks. And really what we want you to do is to be yourself because that's where your presence is at its strongest. Right? That doesn't mean to say you're not trying to grow and develop, but absolutely that's where it is. Okay, so 3 rules of authenticity that I'm going to share with you right now. The first one is accept yourself and be open to growth. Own it. If you make mistakes, own it. I own the fact that I am this color, right? I'm brown and proud. Yeah, and bald and I love the fact. I own it, right? So own it. And I make mistakes to this day. I made a mistake with Molly. I talked about it earlier. I own the mistake. And sometimes we try and cover up mistakes, and that is not what that is about. So accept yourself and be open to growth. A growth mindset is, what did I learn? The conversation with Molly would have been useless if I didn't learn something from it to be curious. And that's just one of many lessons that I have kind of trying to learn in my own growth mindset. Okay, so that's the first thing about being authentic, is own it. The second thing is know your values and live them. Now, if you haven't done anything like a values clarification exercise, do one. Your values are your guideposts that tell you which way to go, particularly when it comes to making difficult decisions. Know your values and be able to express them. And the third one is pause and reflect to connect with yourself. And I would say I've learned this last one probably in the last 5 years since the time I almost died, is the importance of pausing and reflecting, because that touches authenticity. And the way I do it is through mindfulness, right? So my mindfulness practice is about pausing and reflecting and where I am and observing my thoughts and observing what's going on inside my brain without judging them, just allowing them to be there. And in those moments, I touch André Alphonso, the real André Alphonso. That's the power of it. And in fact, I love mindfulness, and it's had such a profound impact on me that my wife and myself are actually starting up a mindfulness business in April online, because I think it is such a powerful thing around presence, around stress, around authenticity, so many different things. Okay, so in summary, before we do a Q&A, here is our deconstructed model of present. Being present in the moment, right? 100% present. We talked about breathing, how you can use breath to make yourself 100% present. Reaching out with empathy, using ting as a metaphor to really listen with your heart and your eyes and your ears, and by being 100% present. Expressiveness, how to use all of the channels available to you, not just words, all of the channels to communicate something with power, 240 volts. You want people eating out of your hand. If you want them eating out of your hand, you've got to use all of the channels to deliver a message. And the last one, self-knowing, is about being you. Being you, because you are the butterfly. Right? Being you is where your presence is going to amplify. Now, that's kind of it in terms of the presentation. And if you want to learn more, you can check us out at Ariel on our website, which is over here. But I'm conscious that we got 5 minutes to go or 4 minutes to go, and I'm happy to take questions from anyone. So please let me know. Okay, thank you. AV, powerful story. Thank you, AV. Anita Pinto, very touching. Thank you, Anita. Jeffrey, thank you, Jeff, for the plug for the podcast.
So,
Red's insight.
Can I just give a quick podcast? So André Alphonso has recently been interviewed by a podcast that PDF has sponsored, 10 lessons that took me 50 years to learn. So the idea being that we want to share 10 powerful lessons. And André, if you love tonight, wait till you hear this podcast. It's just this powerful story about what happened to him and how he came to who he is today. So please listen to the podcast, subscribe, and there'll be plenty more lessons like that as well. So over to you, Annie.
Does anyone else in the audience have any questions that you would like to ask before? So there's a few questions that just came through in the chat. So I'm just quickly looking at it now. So the question is from Belinda. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure. Just curious, how do you stop others from being judgmental about you or about other people? Is it to say, for example, let's stay curious and find out more and figure out how we can help this person rather than judging them? What's a good way to interrupt judgment?
Belinda, I don't know if you can, to be totally honest. I don't know if you can stop other people from judging you. That's their wiring. That's the way they are. You can ask, you can call them out, but those are difficult ways to do it. I think the best way to get people to stop judging you is you reaching out and being empathetic, and people tend to reciprocate. But if you're trying to stop another person from doing something, it's very difficult. Just control you. Don't worry about them, is what I would say. You're going to be judged. I still am judged to this day as I get on a bus, as I walk down the road, as I go to a meeting, right? We all are. Can't affect that, but you can affect you. That's all. What's the next question?
Next question is from Dorinda. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
So, thanks, André. Thanks for that presentation. It was really good. Very insightful. I wanted to, I guess, if there are any practical ways to work on expressiveness, we work on maybe recording ourselves, and if there are certain areas that you shared about 7 of them, would you pick one, and how do you go about working on those specific areas?
Yeah, so I would pick one that you think that you get feedback on. Voice is a very easy one to do, and it comes with practice, Dorinda. So using silence, more vocal variation, that's an easy one. Eye contact, again. So these are not difficult techniques. Putting them all together may be difficult, but in terms of vocal variation, particularly when we are in a virtual world, becomes really important, because one of the things we can get trapped in virtual Zoom calls, Teams meetings, all that sort of stuff, is we tend to go monotone. And we want to fill up the silence. And what we want to do instead is pause. And sometimes when you whisper, is as loud as shouting. Right? So the more variation you use, give yourself permission. So the thing I would say to you, Dorinda, is overcome your fear of overexpression. Now, a quick anecdote. A lot of times people say, oh, if I do move my arms and my legs, I'm not being me, I'm not being authentic. I'm not that sort of person. I just talk like this. Well, you can talk any which way you want. But here's the thing. One of my clients once said to me, I first thought expressing myself was an act of self-indulgence. Then I learned it's an act of kindness to those people listening to me. Because when you express yourself, people listen more. Okay? So I would play with those things. You're going to get that handout from Annie. Just practice it. Come onto our website, and there's some tips that you can look there. There's some YouTube videos that you can look at. There's some, but your idea of recording yourself and then playing it back is a great one, Dorinda. Great question.
Thanks, André.
And that concludes tonight's webinar. Thank you, André, for taking the time to be with us tonight and sharing your stories and personal wisdom. As we can see from the comments in the chat, you definitely have made a powerful impact to our audience through your stories. Also, thank you to the PDF team for making this entire webinar possible. Thank you everyone for joining us here tonight and engaging in the discussion. We hope you enjoyed this session. We'll also be sending to you a short survey by email. If we can ask you to please fill it out, as this will help us better understand the sort of content that you as the audience would like to see from us. If you enjoyed this session, we also have more webinars coming up. Our next webinar will be on next Thursday, 25th of February at 7 p.m. The topic will be on how to build your personal brand and make it the most powerful tool with the branding guru, Gary Brown. A link to a registration page will be provided in the short chat box shortly. We also have other amazing podcasts and videos that you can listen to and watch. So please follow us on all our social media pages and subscribe to our newsletters via our website to keep updated with everything. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.